This is good not just for people who might be called to marriage or priesthood or religious life. This is very important for all of us, especially when it comes to our tendency to kind of look and see the grass is greener kind of a situation. I'm in a place of difficulty. I'm in a place where there's a little bit more struggle, but over there looks so much easier, and it always does. Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents. So whenever it comes to the topic of discernment, people have a lot of questions. So here's this guy, he's like, I'm dating this girl, and things are going really, really well. But here's the big question that's on my heart. Does God want me? Is he calling me to enter the seminary and be a priest? Or is he calling me to be a religious brother? Or here's the young woman, she's dating somebody. She's like, I don't know. Maybe God is calling me to break up with this guy and enter religious life. There is this tendency, or there is this temptation to bounce back and forth and kind of like go in and out of this whole thing. In fact, I remember very, very clearly at one point I had discerned out of a relationship and into the seminary. And at one point after that, I remember talking to a priest about this and saying, like, I've discerned it's a seminary, I haven't gone there yet, but maybe I should date this other person. And he said, okay, yeah, maybe. But then he said, pause on this for a second. He said, one thing you want to avoid is you want to avoid being what he called, and I apologize for the slur, he said, you want to avoid being an Irish bachelor. I'm like, well, what's that? He said, an Irish bachelor is a guy who's just like you, was in a relationship. And he says, no, I have to leave this to go into seminary. Then he does. And the seminary says, no, I have to leave this to go into a relationship. And he does. And he goes, no, I have to leave this relationship. Back and forth, right? This Irish bachelor, this person who doesn't actually plant themselves in a place and say, okay, I'm going to actually discern the vocation. That's just bouncing back and forth. That's right. That's being a ping pong ball. That's being a tennis ball, being a pickleball. It's being some kind of ball that does not pick a side. And just with the idea, again, this is the key, with just the idea, just with the notion of maybe I'm called somewhere else, or I would like to be somewhere else, they just bounce. And then he gave me this very, very good advice. And he said this, because I said, well, yeah, but how do I know? How do I know if I continue to pursue this course of like, go to seminary, keep going. And he said, this wise note, you can only discern one vocation at a time. So if you are in a relationship, that's the vocation you're discerning. If you're in the seminary or in religious life, that's the vocation that you're discerning. I can't be in a relationship, but also discerning priesthood. It just can't be. You're discerning that relationship. I can't be in the seminary and also discerning a relationship, because there you are in the seminary, or there you are in religious life. It was a panel discussion I was part of, and a young man in the back of the room said, I have a question. Should I end my relationship and enter the seminary? And I was like, okay, this is an interesting question. And I noticed he was standing next to a young woman. Is she right there next to you? And he's like, yep. And she's like, yep. And I was like, okay, that's A, kind of rude, I guess, and B, come back to this truth. I can only discern one vocation at a time. Now, on those same lines, let's look at someone who's in a relationship. So here's Joe. Joe's in a relationship with Jane. Joe is not discerning marriage. Joe is discerning marriage with Jane. Like, this is important for us to really just dial in. Because someone could say, no, I've discerned that I'm called to marriage. Like, I don't know that you can. I don't know that you can do that. I don't know that you can discern I'm called to this particular kind of like very, very umbrella-esque vocation. It is this. Is there someone there in your life with whom you have entered into a relationship? Now you can discern a relationship, or now you can discern marriage, a lifetime with that person. Because until then, it's just information gathering, which is great. Information gathering is great to reflect on yourself and to say, what do I know about myself? What kind of information can I gather about myself? What kind of, what's my personality type? How well do I do? Do I do with being with other people all the time? How well do I do with being alone all the time? How well do I respond to these kinds of pressures or invitations to rise to a challenge? Like, just knowing about yourself is a really good thing. That's information gathering. It's also good to know about other people and to be in some relationships, whether they be family relationships or friendships or romantic relationships. You're learning something about how you do in those things and something about those other people. But when you actually get into a relationship, now that's when discernment starts. Yeah, there's been some weighing things out, but it's been information gathering. It's not until we make a decision to go to a place, whether that place be seminary, religious life formation, or in a relationship, that we can actually discern that particular vocation. Does that make sense? Take the example of a guy who's discerning seminary or a woman discerning religious life. They can gather information about what life is like in the seminary or what life of a priest would be like. She can gather information about life in this religious community. That's wonderful. That's awesome. But they won't actually be able to discern, okay, is God calling me to this life? Is God calling me to this particular relationship with him until they start moving? Same thing is true with our friend Joe and his maybe girlfriend Jane. He can't actually discern a relationship with Jane until he's in a relationship with Jane. Now, obviously, again, that doesn't mean you have to jump in with both feet. That means at some point you have to start taking steps. Again, someone discerning relationship, taking steps towards relationship. See how that person is responding to you. This is just common sense, right? Same thing when it comes to seminary. You apply to the diocese. Do they accept you as an application? Or you apply to a religious community and you see what they say. Those are taking those steps. And that's part of the discernment process. If you've already started moving in one direction or another, say, I'm already in a relationship, or I've already started seminary, I've already started religious formation. You're in that discernment for that particular vocation, for that particular relationship. And you can only discern one vocation at a time. So, unless the Lord reaches in and says, this is the wrong step, this next step needs to be directed over this other direction, then you can simply be at peace and say, okay, I'm going to keep taking steps in this direction until I'm told to either stop or change direction. Or until you might discern, I want to stop, I want to change direction. You know, someone can be in religious life formation and say, okay, I know enough now that I'm not called to this. Someone could be in seminary and say, I know enough now. I now know enough to be able to discern out of this. Someone in a relationship obviously can say, I know enough now that I'm going to discern out of this. And then what they'll do is they'll end that, whatever that discernment is, and start new discernment. Because we can only discern one vocation at a time. So if you're already in a place of discernment, be there. Like, just be there. Discern this particular relationship. Discern this particular call to priesthood or religious life. Be there and be at peace. If the Lord's calling you somewhere else, you'll know. And you'll know either because God has moved in your heart that way, or because you realize, now I know, and I know that I don't want to be here. And you'll take the next step. But only discern one vocation at a time. Anyway, for all this here, Ascension presents. My name is Father Mike. God bless.